Hey, this is Madalyn Sklar.
And Suze Cooper, and you're listening to All Things Audio.
You know, the world turned upside down yesterday on November 1st when Elon Musk tweeted about the blue check mark. And prior to this, he was talking about charging a fee, verification, incorporating Twitter Blue, all this into one, and talking about this $20. And I tell you what was so interesting is that Stephen King, the author, had tweeted back like that he wasn't going to pay that. And then Elon goes, how about $8? And next thing you know, he made the official tweet yesterday about $8. Twitter Blue, $8. It includes the blue check mark. So it is a thread. It is an interesting thread. So I put the first tweet in the nest. It'll be available in the show notes for our podcast listeners. But really the tweet that caught my attention and your attention was a tweet further down the thread where he's talking about like other things you'll get with Twitter Blue. And Twitter Blue is a subscription service. I have it. I imagine it's going to have to go global, but for now it's US, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia. And I've been paying $2.99. They are raising it to $4.99. But what Elon's talking about now is for $8 a month, in addition to, all these perks you get, he wants to add a whole bunch of new ones, which is in this thread, plus the verified blue check mark. But grabbed my attention when I saw it say ability to post long video and audio. So I saw that audio. I didn't catch it the first time. I had to read the thread a few times. I was like, audio? Is he talking about audio tweets, which you and I have played around with lots of times, which nobody really uses? I think the only person I know of that uses it on a regular basis is Jennifer Navarrete. And she does a very good job of doing a daily audio tweet. But so few people use it. So is he talking about that? Or does he mean audio like spaces? What is he talking about? What are your thoughts?
Far be it from me to suggest that perhaps he's not being particularly clear or not kind of doubling down on the features that perhaps Twitter has right now. It's a very kind of vague tweet, isn't it? It's a vague post. So yeah, ability to post long video and audio. As you say, what could that mean? In my head, that is the voice tweets, because he's talking about posting long video and audio. He lumps that in together. If you're posting the audio, then in my head, that is the equivalent of a text tweet. In audio would be a voice tweet. So I think he's talking about those pre-recorded or longer. I mean, you can do it in two ways, can't you? You've spoken about this before. You can either pre-record it and then tweet it out, or you can go live just with audio only. I think he's talking about that. However, he doesn't appear to me in my head to be talking about spaces, and he doesn't appear to mention spaces at all in this thread. And I wonder if that's an obvious omission or just something that he's overlooked, or I don't know. It can't be overlooked. There must just be more to it that isn't coming out right now, right?
Right. That's what I think it is, because it is very vague. He doesn't say spaces at all, but he just uses the word audio. And we know that Twitter was recently, looking into some like video that would compete, like having adult content video, long form content video to compete with some of those other sites that do that. And it seemed like they were not going to do it. But now with all of this new information coming out from Elon Musk, they're talking about, having a paywall for videos. The thing is, I think it's just too much. He's putting so much. He has all these ideas and he's just throwing it all out there to see what's going to stick. I mean, I don't want us to spend our whole hour talking, because we could. And actually, tomorrow for my Twitter Smarter Space, George Silverman and I are going to do a little bit more of a deep dive as a community chat and talk about this, because it's such big news right now. But I just think there's just so much up in the air. We don't know where all this is going to go. My only concern right now, Suze, is that we know resources have been shifting around, right? Different departments are moving to other departments. I'm curious, the Twitter Spaces team, how many people are left on the team? And is Spaces going to be okay? Are we going to start having issues because they don't have enough people working on it and maintaining it?
Yeah, and I've been wondering the same. All of those people that we built relationships with in the early days, we don't see them quite so often hanging around in spaces anymore. And for some of them, we know that they've moved to other teams. They've left the company or they've been moved around. There's been reshuffles. And, this has obviously had a massive impact on who's working where.
A little concerning earlier this afternoon, like literally 30 minutes ago, a tweet went out from Danny Singh. And many of you know that name, Danny Singh, because he's been running, in charge of Twitter Spaces. He's kind of like the person at the top there that's managing it. And he puts out a tweet this afternoon saying, if you could pay to DM someone, like he's trying to get people's thoughts on paying for DMs, which means he's definitely shifting his focus from Spaces to now this new idea of paying for DMs, which makes me think of LinkedIn, right? When you think of paying for InMail. So I'm a little concerned about everything with Spaces right now. It just seems like everything is shifting. Everything's moving at warp speed. We already know that they've got team members at Twitter living there day and night and working crazy shifts to get some of these new things up and running immediately. So just hard to know where this is all going to land. I think week to week, things are just going to keep changing when we come in here and talk about it.
Elon's going to want to stamp his mark on Twitter in one way or another. And, where audio is concerned at the moment in the wider scheme of things in terms of content creation with podcasts, you look at podcasts, everyone, YouTube is certainly talking about video podcasts. So it is all about audio that comes as a audio package, and what does that look like and what does that mean? All of that is still being figured out by content creators. People are having a go at it. These platforms, these remote recording platforms that give you the ability to have, high quality audio, but also great video at the same time, and making it easier for people to do that. So, if you purchase a social media platform that has the ability to do both of those things, what are you going to do with it? Are you just going to run with one, audio offering, or are you going to bring video kind of very much back into the mix and see what sticks, I guess, like you say? It seems unlikely to me that video isn't going to feature heavily, because we're not hearing anything about Spaces. We're hearing very little about audio, but video seems to be floating to the top all the time. All the different tweets, the different conversations around this. I know Morgan commented on the tweet that you've just popped in the nest, which was the Washington Post story that I read earlier. And, he's kind of saying about how Elon has already instructed engineers to assess Vine's old code. And that might be fast-tracked during this time of those constrained engineering resources, which may well displace other projects. And I think Morgan's got a very, very valid point. It is very much up in the air, and we're not quite sure where it's all going to land.
Right. And, I think going all in on video right now is a mistake, because, and I've been trying to get people to use video on Twitter for years. I'm always pushing it. But I always remind everybody, why is it that you don't see more video on Twitter? Because nobody they think to go to TikTok. They think Instagram stories and reels. When you're thinking of video and you want to go share it on social media, you don't think of Twitter. I do, but most people don't. So you got to get people using Twitter for video more before you just start going this whole big direction of paid videos and trying to get long form videos going. I think it's going to take a little time. I don't think just overnight people are going to go, oh, let me just start doing all my videos over on Twitter. You got people that are too established on TikTok and Instagram to just give that up, or do in addition to, because you could do in addition to as well. Just also take your videos, put them on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing is, Twitter started as the microblogging site. That's what we knew it as. It was all very text-based. Audio comes in, and, as we've said with the audio tab, is Twitter somewhere that people are going to come to listen to podcasts? Already there's this leap between, we're used to scrolling Twitter and reading it. Asking people to listen is a different mode. Asking people to watch is a different mode again. So it is all around this kind of user experience and behavioural stuff. Spaces has taken some people quite, a long time. Some people still won't have even tried it, but it will take people a while to get used to the fact that they can listen here on Twitter. It's whether or not they want to push the fact that they want you listening to things or whether they want you watching things or whether they're going to try and be a jack of all trades and offer all of it all at once. I have no idea what the answer is and I have no idea where they're heading with it. But as I say, keeping my eyes and ears open for it, that's for sure.
Right. And last week I did read that Elon Musk was saying he wanted to turn Twitter into an all-in-one app, like App X, and just make it be everything, kind of like a WhatsApp, where it's just everything.
And that's what worries me because, you become the jack of all trades and master of none. And that's the fear, isn't it? We'll watch and wait and see.
Oh, I'm sure there's going to be between now and next week 20 more emails from Elon for us to talk about. I mean, it's just amazing, like how many pieces of content he's putting out on a daily basis right now with all of these ideas. And not to say that they're all bad. I mean, he's got some great ideas. I'm just concerned, like, is he trying to really push the limits and just do everything all at once? So, we'll have lots to talk about next week, I'm sure. I love this tweet from Morgan talking about Twitter Spaces stats. Did you find this interesting?
Yeah, another great thread from Morgan. I can see you here in the space. Hopefully you can come and chat to us once the mics are open in a bit. So these Twitter Spaces stats, Morgan's pulled out that Twitter has more than 237 million daily users, but less than 0.5% have started a space in the last year or so. And he's talking about kind of US growth being flat, 203,345 English language spaces in October, slightly less than the previous month. Now, we have been watching Spaces dashboard stats and sort of seeing them either be consistent or grow slightly each month. So that's interesting to know that September kind of dip down again. Morgan's looking here as well at the follower growth rate for the official Twitter Spaces account and showing a graph that shows it trending downwards. Again, are people thinking to follow the Spaces account now? I know we were all trying to follow it in the first place because everyone was trying to work out what Spaces was and see whether or not the Twitter Spaces official account was going to be a good source of information for us. So potentially it's more that people who wanted to find out what Spaces was are already following it. The fact that they're not pushing it as much anymore means that people aren't going there to find it. But yeah, really interesting thread once again, really detailed and well laid out. So yeah, would love to chat with Morgan, as I say, when the mic's open.
Yeah, and I also put in the nest the tweet from Andrew at Spaces Dashboard. He did a tweet. He's doing this like every month, like showing like what are the stats for the month. So for the month of October, he says there were over 1 million Twitter Spaces created, which is still mind-blowing to me, and then 75 million participants. And we know there's going to be a much smaller percent of creators and people starting spaces. So Morgan's tweet stats information, I wasn't too terribly surprised. I mean, I wish more people would start spaces and do it. But I think a lot of people are like you and I. We're the ones, it's a smaller group, and we're the ones doing most of it. Just like how there's a small percentage of people who do the bulk of the tweets, right? There's been stats that show that. And it seems like that's the case here as well. There's like a group of us that we are so into spaces. A lot of us are doing multiple spaces per week, if not already doing at least one once a week. And so we're the same people generating the bulk of them.
Yeah, and I think, all the while that there's this uncertainty around what's going to happen with the platform, anyone that hasn't already dived into Twitter Spaces might be hesitant to start creating content regularly here. Rightly so, really. No one wants to start another content channel that may well be pulled from under them, I guess. So I think while there is uncertainty about the future of it, we probably will see those stats go down month on month, which is unfortunate. So let's just hope there's some exciting announcements about it, some reassuring announcements, and maybe that will reassure people and ensure that there are more spaces in future, and we can start hearing new stuff again here on Spaces.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope people don't get discouraged from being a part of Spaces. And speaking of Spaces, the Spaces Twitter account last week was asking people in a tweet, have you used the soundboard, and which sounds are you using the most? I'm not a huge fan of the soundboard. I don't use it myself. And I was reading through a lot of these comments. It seems like a lot of people feel the same way I do. They're just not using it, or you get Android users who don't even have the ability to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I kind of picked up on this one. The Twitter Spaces account hasn't tweeted anything massive in recent days and weeks. Are we surprised? I mean, there was a nice Halloween tweet from them, which was in keeping with the season. But yeah, the soundboard tweet that came out, I guess I copied this one into our Notion board, Madalyn, because we were talking a few weeks ago about the soundboard and, about the fact that we don't really use it. And I think this is potentially Spaces kind of mining for some feedback in terms of, are they going to reduce the sounds that are available to people on the soundboard? Are they looking around to... I'm fairly sure they're not looking around to add any sounds to it. But I wonder if it's just something they just don't need to work on. As we've said, there have been cuts there. This was only something that was rolled out to iOS at the moment. So rather than roll it out to Android if no one's enjoying it and, no one wants it, the likelihood is they might kill it, right, instead. So I think potentially that's sort of the tweet that's gauging interest and trying to get them some feedback there. And, it's had quite a few comments on it, so they'll have heard some feedback from it. But yeah, I sort of thought that linked in quite nicely with the comments that we had a couple of weeks ago about the soundboard.
And surprisingly, that's it for Spaces news. We've got Clubhouse news to discuss next. I'm actually kind of glad we're moving through this kind of fast because I can't wait for our community to request a mic in a little bit. And I just looking forward to hearing their thoughts on everything going on with Twitter right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our first bit of Clubhouse news feeds on from the soundboard news on Twitter. It's actually a tweet from Michael Sterling, and it is a sort of mocked up, maybe screen grab of Clubhouse's Paul Davidson in his little profile picture avatar bubble, showing lots of different emojis in the corner. And what it says is that when Clubhouse releases its soundboard, which is incoming, effects will simultaneously trigger an accompanying emoji reaction on the user's profile picture. So that's pretty cute. It's a pretty neat thing to do. I guess if you're already there, on screen, tapping away and therefore triggering the sound, you're there to see the reaction appear. I quite like the fact you can tap and hold your profile picture and share a GIF with people over on Clubhouse. And, I think, again, this is just kind of a fun addition. If you're going to have a soundboard, hey, why not make the most of the soundboard? So, yeah, following on from our Twitter soundboard news, Clubhouse soundboard news, because, we wouldn't want one to do something that the other doesn't.
Exactly. And so there's also in the nest a tweet from Alessandro Paluzzi. He had done a tweet last month and was talking about, they're working on this and that there are currently 8 sound effects, but it could change before the official release. Well, his new tweet that came out today is threaded to the other tweet saying there's now 14 sound effects, but then also saying it may change before the official release. And then I noticed there was a response from Sina. And it's interesting because when you go to Sina's profile, it says Telegram and Clubhouse Professional Beta Tester, which I thought was super. What an interesting title. And was responding to this tweet saying, talking about how it's going to work, when you hold your own profile, is how that's going to actually work, and shows the reaction emojis and the sound effect. So there's a few more tweets saying that the sound effects are controlled by the moderators, which I think is a great idea, and that everyone on stage can use the soundboard sound effects if it's enabled in the room from the moderators. And then there's another tweet that says it's going to get released on iOS tomorrow, which will be November 3rd. So it'll be interesting to see it in action, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's interesting that they've got a reduced number of sound effects from what we see over here on Twitter. I don't know for sure how many we've got on the soundboard, but I'm fairly sure it's more than 14. It's interesting to see them having their own take on it and, combining it with those little emojis. And I like the fact that moderators have got the control over it. That's something that we've spoken about at length, really, around having it here on Spaces. We'd quite like to either be able to curate it or turn it off completely. I think it's right that the moderators have the control over what people are going to hear in their room, whether or not that is the people that are speaking. We've got the mute all button, all of those kind of things, or its sound effects and background noises. So, yeah, I think all of that it seems very well thought through, certainly.
Most definitely. And then you have a tweet about another Clubhouse tweet, token gated houses.
Yeah, so the token gated houses story that Morgan has spoken about over the last couple of weeks, I don't know anything more than the fact that John Milanovic over here on Twitter has tweeted to say he was excited to say token gated houses are now in beta on Clubhouse. And he basically run his first house for an NFT project and had used that. So if you've been following that story that Morgan has so eloquently put across in the last couple of episodes of All Things Audio, that is now in beta. So, yeah, it's one that's taking off.
Yeah. And then you've got some Amazon AMP news to report.
Yeah. So the link here is actually from GeekWire, but I think it was Business Insider potentially that broke the story that Amazon were making staff cuts at AMP, which is the Amazon AMP, the social audio offering that they were giving. So it was launched earlier this year. The idea was that it was going to reimagine radio. It allowed hosts to create their own radio show, making use of the Amazon Music catalogue. And we did a lot of chat around the fact that surely this is what Spotify Live was meant to be like. And where was this going to go? And it was interesting that it was coming from Amazon. So, but these cuts basically suggest that it's kind of really winding down for them now. And I feel like it's one of those things, again, that's winding down before it's even really wound up. I say it in the tweet that I've sent out today, which is, who has actually had access to this, either as a creator or a listener. And, they're suggesting that these cutbacks on the team are due to lack of use. But if you don't give someone the ability to actually use the app, how on earth can you assess its usefulness or whether people are going to use it? As far as I know, Amazon AMP was only ever open to those who were invited to use it and create shows over there. It was US only. So I know me and George had a discussion about how I might be able to access it on the web when they made it available on the web via VPN, because it is only US. So I was just seeing a blank page over here in the UK. They had a creator fund, which only a few weeks ago they were kind of shouting about getting college students to create their own radio shows using Amazon AMP. And I really hoped that we might see it progress onto Alexa in some way and really bring social audio and voice together. Although, Amazon is a pretty big company and they are quite siloed. So, whether or not that ever would have come to fruition, I don't know. But that was kind of my dream that I thought I might see. And now it feels like it's finishing before it's even started, which is a bit of a disappointment.
It really is. I've had access to it, being that I'm in the US. I was not terribly impressed with it. I spent a little time on it when it was new. Didn't really care for it. I've been on it a few more times since, but it's just not for me. But being that it's Amazon, you would think they have the resources, give it a little bit more of a chance, give more people access, so it's not just US only. So I was really surprised by this news. I just didn't think it was going to happen.
It really feels like, a big company giving a nod to the latest thing. Which is upsetting, really, because it didn't have to be that way. If they really thought they had something there, it's not like Amazon doesn't own, various audio outlets. They've got Amazon Music, Amazon Podcasts, all of those kind of things. And as I say, I really feel like there is potential for Alexa to be brought into the fold and for people to be able to interact in that way. You speak to these devices. And the idea that someone's live on the other end of it, how could that work? I mean, my brain just goes bonkers with creative thinking around it. But yeah, I don't know. I don't understand these companies, clearly.
I don't understand either. And, in reading this article, it says that roughly 150 people or half of the division were let go. And it's like they had that many people working on Amazon AMP? That's like a lot, 150 people, and that was half the divisions.
Yeah, and you have that many people, but you're probably only letting equal to that many people actually create on it, as far as I could tell.
Right, exactly. That's such a great point.
So what's the point?
Right.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, if you had 300 team members on this, ramp it up, give it a real go before just We don't want to do it anymore.
Yeah, it's like a kid fed up with their new toy.
Yes, exactly. Great point.
Yeah, and then I found this last article, which is actually so jam-packed with different things that made me think that I haven't actually finished thinking about it completely yet, but I definitely want to bring it to your attention. It is a long-form read. It's from protocol.com. It runs through a whole heap of things, and rather than being, the kind of social audio is dead type article, this, while it's headlined "Why Audio Will Never Capture the Hearts of Social Media Users," is written very much in the vein of the "Why Audio Doesn't Go Viral" type essay that went crazy on the internet a few years ago. It's so thoughtful about what it's trying to say about the different platforms. It runs through pretty much everybody and talks about why audio might not be the right mode to get messages across on social. It really has made me think. There are a couple of bits in it that totally kind of leapt out at me, if you like. One of them was Chris Messina's comment, where he says that the success of social audio shouldn't be defined by what we've seen before. And I like the fact he described it as its own small suburb of social media land. I think that's true of quite a lot of things. I think, we're trying to define things by the number of people that listen, that kind of thing. Whereas, in fact, for me, social audio is more about the actual full-on proper human relationships that I've built through social audio over the last couple of years. Totally outnumber the number of followers I might have got through doing it. And those connections are far more valuable to me as well. So he's right. We need to think about how we define what success looks like for social audio. So that definitely got me thinking. And there's also a comment in there from Matt Navarra. And he kind of suggests that social audio has arrived at the wrong time. And I wasn't too sure about that, to be honest. I mean, when Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse were released during, dare I say it, the pandemic and COVID and everything, people thought it was a great way of getting in touch with people on the other side of the world when you literally can't leave your own four walls. That wasn't the wrong time. I think he's trying to refer to the fact that, Elon's now bought Twitter and it might all be turned on its head. No one could have predicted that. I mean, maybe a year or so ago, but beyond that, I don't think you can kind of put that in that context, if you see what I mean. And is it the wrong time? It could go either way still, as we started at the top of the show talking about. So, yeah, and another interesting one that's got me thinking, and as you can hear, I'm still thinking it through while I'm talking. But lots of things. If you are interested in social audio in any way, do go across, read through this article, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. So do tweet me, at me, comment on the tweet that I've sent out that Madalyn's popped in the nest, because I would love to hear from you. But yeah, so that was our last piece of news for today. So we've got George up as a speaker, Madalyn.
Hey, George.
Hey, how are you?
Good. Glad you could join us.
You're quite welcome. I have a few comments that I'd love to make. You raised the whole issue of people going more toward video and looking at video and all of that. As many of you know, I've been doing social audio for 51 years. Invented the telephone focus group. And what happened with the telephone focus group is very instructive here. What happened was I did it for about 10 or 15 years, was probably the highest paid moderator in the country because I could get people other people couldn't get. But then so I moved on to become a marketing consultant using that as a major tool. But what happened was, as I wound down a little bit on it, other people got the idea that video is better. So video conferencing was just coming in at the time, and there were all these video rooms set up so that remote moderators could moderate local groups and then groups in various locations. And the clients thought that video was better than audio for obvious reasons. And it is obvious. Video has to be better than audio because you see facial expressions, body language, and gestures. But it's just not true. Those are distractions. And I proved it. I did parallel groups. I did a lot of experiments. I had a huge number of demos. people wouldn't have any of it. They just wouldn't even listen to me. I moved on to consulting. I was fine, but other people who were doing telephone focus groups kind of went out of business, or their business wound down because people thought video obviously had to be better. So it flies in the face of common sense. And I think that's going to happen again. I think I hear a lot of people saying, oh, wow, if Twitter only had video, if we could only see each other. No, if we could see each other, the psychological safety would be destroyed. And we'd be back, this whole idea that there's never been a better time for social audio ever. Every time has been a great time for social audio. And telephone focus groups never went out of style. They were used for experts that you couldn't get together. So my business went toward, instead of ordinary homemakers and working white collar, blue collar workers, things like that, I became the guy you went to for experts, because by audio teleconferencing, I could get together people who you couldn't get to a face-to-face group, like Nobel Prize winning economists. I did congressmen regularly, did Fortune 100 CEOs regularly. I could get them, nobody else could get them. But how could I get them? Because they only had to pick up their phone, no makeup, no hair, no nothing, no rehearsal, and above all, a great deal of psychological safety. So I could do all kinds of patients' AIDS groups and stuff like that. So that's the first thing. So there's going to be a great temptation to go to video, in summary, and it's going to be a false hope. And it's up to us to explain why actually audio, paradoxically, is better than video, despite the fact that audio has less, quote, information, unquote. But it also has more, video has more distraction. Also, moving on, I think I'm worried, as Madalyn is, that Elon may have too many things on his plate. But more than that, I'm worried that Twitter has too many things on its plate. It is possibly headed. I don't predict that this will happen. In fact, I predict the opposite will happen. But there's a significant risk, I'd like to say, that Twitter becomes one of these companies that tries to be a Swiss Army knife. It tries to be everything to everybody. And let me point out that Swiss Army knives are terrible at each of the things that it does. Swiss Army knife is a lousy knife, and it's a lousy corkscrew, and it's a lousy awl, and it's a lousy nail file, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's great to have all these things in one place. And so Swiss Army knives are fairly popular, but they're not as popular as hunting knives, or not as popular as pocket knives, regular, ordinary pocket knives, et cetera. So at any rate, if it tries to be everything to everybody, it ain't going to be nothing to nobody. So but on the other hand, if it positions itself as the only real-time idea swapping app, that you can see ideas develop in real time, and I have a lot more to say about this tomorrow in Madalyn's group, because I gave myself the assignment and promised to report back on doing a week of TweetDeck with no Twitter, no regular Twitter. But so I don't want to summarize that, but just one point of that is that what TweetDeck showed me is that, and Robert Scoble's talked about this a lot too, TweetDeck is the only real-time social media medium. So I can post a tweet and actually watch the reactions to that tweet happening in real time. Well, and reply to them in real time. And watch a developing news story in real time. So it's the only real time. So if it positions itself as the real time one, or the great idea swapping app, how do you swap ideas? Well, you need short form, you need long form, you need threads, you need tweets, you need audio, you need video, you need articles, you need atomic essays, and on and on and on and on. And those were just different forms of the same fundamental thing. They would do incredibly well. And my prediction is that this will happen. There are plenty of us who are going to point this out to Elon. And I think he's going to get the message eventually. And I predict that Twitter is going to be the largest social medium by far. It's going to be a company that rivals Google. If they do this, if they follow and make themselves the town hall, the world town hall, or something like that. So that's my shot.
That's an interesting take, George. I like all that. That was really good. And I just want to like totally validate the whole conference call thing. I was doing that like 20 years ago, and that was social audio. It was just you did it on a phone.
Aside from the experts, especially the business experts, 95% of all people on my telephone focus groups were people who had never been on a conference call before. They had never even heard of a conference call until we called them up and invited them to be on it. We literally had to explain to them what a conference call is. There are probably people on here who are too young to even know what a conference call was. It was basically a big party line. 10, 15 people jumped on the same phone call and they could all talk with each other all way, no hand raising, no nothing.
Well, the way I used it was I would bring on a guest to interview and I keep everybody muted but me and the guest, very much similar to how we use Spaces or Clubhouse. But I mean, this was available by calling, you could have either an 800 number or a long distance number. And, 20 years ago, it was like a long distance was a big deal and expensive. But like you just have this phone number, you give it to people and they could call in and listen, or you could allow them to speak. And, so it's not a new concept at all.
If I did a national one or an international one, there's a national one, it cost me $400 in telephone company fees to get the phone company to hook me all up. So we were charging present day equivalents of $10,000 per call, but $450 went to the phone company. Now it's all free. Oh, by the way, I wanted to mention last Friday I ran a space called "Welcome Elon: What Us Tweets Want" or something like that. I'll put it up in the nest. It got. I have a question for Andrew here. The thing I'm about to put up in the nest says that it. Let me look again. It says 599 people tuned in, and on. Let me just put that in the nest. Well, I've got it on there. Okay, and but Spaces dashboard says 370 or 470. I'm not sure what it is, but 470. There it is. So there's a discrepancy. One says 470, one says 599. I'm not sure what it was, but I put that up with no announcement. I looked for. I figured this is the first day Elon took over Twitter. And so I figured, oh my God, there got to be like 20 spaces discussing this. I want to discuss this and see what other people think about Elon taking over Twitter. So I looked and I couldn't find it. Of course, they had this wonderful irony alert, wonderful ability to discover spaces on Twitter. So I went a little nuts there. Of course, went over to Spaces dashboard, found nothing. So I could reliably establish through Andrew's app that there was nothing going on. I said, what? That's impossible. So I instantly started a space, "Welcome Elon, here's what we twits want," or something like that. Here's what we twits would like. Impromptu focus group. That's what I called it. And it died for the first 10 or 15 minutes. And I was literally a thumb push away from shutting it down. And then people started flooding in. We had 600 people in total. It's a lot of replays. And my hope is that Elon and his team will get to listen to it. There was a flood. Upshot of it is there's a flood of pent-up demand. If you get any Twitter users together, you can get 100 feature requests, and you can sort them out rather quickly because people will tell you what they're really passionate about needing on Twitter. And if they listen to their customers, wow, do they have something here? It's going to quadruple in a year if they only listen to the customers. And this past listening to the customers doesn't count. It's just pathetic.
Well, I tell you, this room, this space you hosted, thank you for sharing it in the nest, really shows you the power of social audio. You created created a town hall to get feedback and to just discuss, and I love it. I can't wait to go listen to the replay.
Yeah, and if Twitter had spent $10,000-$15,000, I'm not fishing for them doing that because I'm retired. I'm not looking for the business. But if they had gone to one of my leading focus group colleagues, that focus group would have cost them, I don't know, $10,000-$15,000 to run. I ran it for them for free, and I'm one of the top moderators in the country. So my fee would be up in that level to run it. I ran it for free, and I'm going to run many more of them because I want Twitter to become what I want it to become, and we have the power to do that now.
Well, a free focus group is Spaces or Clubhouse, social audio. I mean, that's the power of social audio right there. Well, thank you for sharing all this, George. All right, Morgan's next up.
Hi, both. What a week.
Indeed. What a week.
A lot going on.
Yeah.
Where are you going to start, Morgan? What are you going to start with?
I don't know. Bracketing out what he may or may not do, I think one of the things that I've been surprised by is just the potential speed of execution here. It might be that lots of ideas are being thrown at the wall. We've been told that Elon has told engineers to contact him directly and just pitch any good idea they have. But it does seem like he wants to and has the ability to push things through quickly. Now, this might also be at the cost of the work-life balance of their engineers. We've seen pictures of people sleeping on the floor in Twitter's office at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So the other part of that is remaking the company culture. He has, I've lost the tweet, but he's basically gone through and gutted the leadership ranks. Anybody who was, and I think there's some very good people there, the head of a thing is being removed. So this is going to be quite a culture change, not only in the way they work, but what they do. And I hope we've also heard, and this is a positive thing, mentioned twice now of Kayvon, who was the former head of product, being cited in the Twitter headquarters with what they're calling the war room people. And Kayvon is much loved in Twitter. You saw that when he was unceremoniously dismissed while on paternity leave by Parag, that the tweets from his fellow tweeps were heaping praise on him. And I think if Kayvon is kept on, that's a silver lining here. He's also, as I think we know, the person who spearheaded the Spaces project within Twitter.
Yep.
As well as some other things, communities too, creator content sort of stuff. So Kayvon, having him as a well-loved person, as a figure of continuity in that team, would be, I think, a strong point. So if that happens, I think that's good. But just on the whole, we don't know what's going to happen. I do think this talk about him really wanting to get serious with competing with TikTok and becoming a super app, we should take that seriously. But it feels like Twitter are pushing through and will be able to execute things much faster than they've done before. So things will change around here, but it could be that some of those are good changes. So I wanted to just drop in that positive spin on it too, with some caution.
I want to totally agree with Morgan.
Yeah. And I want to mention Kayvon, if people don't know this, he was a co-founder of Periscope, which Twitter bought many years ago. And then he was head of product at Twitter. So when I was mentioning Danny Singh earlier, who was like over Spaces, Kayvon was over all of that stuff. I mean, he was over a lot of very good positive features that we all love. So I'm glad you brought that up, Morgan. Such a good point.
I'm interested to know, Morgan, like we went through that Elon thread and sort of picked out the fact that he only really mentions audio in the same line as video and doesn't pick out Spaces anywhere. I mean, what's your kind of take on that? Is that just them waiting to decide what to do with Spaces? Or, yeah, what do you think?
I'm not sure yet. It goes two ways. So I'm beginning to think it's clear this isn't number one priority. The number one priority is increasing revenue right now and reducing costs. So cutting headcount is going to be one of those. The other one is cutting capital expenditure, but also everywhere that he can find where he can introduce a paywall or a reason to subscribe to something, that's going to happen. His stated longer term ambition is to reduce Twitter reliance on ad revenue from 89%, I think it is, of their current revenue to 50%. So that's a lot of things that will have subscription or paywalls attached to them. Potentially, that's really good for creators if you can do that in the right way, because one of the other things was sharing revenue from those with creators themselves. But there's the question about what it is we'll be creating. It could well be that I don't imagine Spaces is going to disappear, but it's just not number one priority now, but may well be worked into all of the creative stuff that they do. So that's fine as far as it goes. It does sound like if he's talking about TikTok and basically ByteDance is the final boss of this game, taking them on will mean a much bigger push into short form video and then potentially live streaming video, which is a place that TikTok is beginning to move. And for TikTok, this is linked with commerce. So they want people to sell things through that. And it's an open question for me. I ended my thought is this good for all things that are live? Or if live video, Twitter takes another run at it? Obviously, Kayvon was the man behind Periscope. Live video is his background. If they take another run at that, where does live audio fit in it? Do we start getting more comfortable talking to video if we're doing this, or does it just mean that it's another part of live? As George said, Twitter is this network about what's happening now, and we shouldn't worry about the audio part. It's just not the thing they're going to be pushing hard in the next 6 months.
Very interesting thoughts as ever. Thank you, Morgan. Yeah, lots for us all to think about there. Amazing. George, I have an answer for you about your Spaces dashboard discrepancy from Andrew. He says, Spaces dashboard shows live numbers only. We don't have access to the replay numbers. That's why there's a difference.
So it's in the replay. So it's 600 is the total. I didn't know 600 was the total.
Yeah, 600, because when on desktop, it shows 604, which would be the total. But you as the host on mobile, it will give you more of the stats and it will show you the breakdown between replays and live, whereas Spaces dashboard, it's only how many showed up live, not replays.
Thank you. I wanted to expand on what Morgan said about something. Speed of innovation. I've been tweeting, some of you have seen, buckle up, helmets on, goggles on, gloves on, strap in, we're in for a ride. And we are, because people like Elon Musk, those kinds of innovator, entrepreneur, engineer types, innovate at 100 times the speed of most other businesses. And just look at SpaceX, Tesla, Boring, Neuralink, etc. Look at all his companies. Look at the speed of innovation. Number two, engineers engage in something called destructive testing, which is basically put a lot of stress on something, make it break, see where it breaks, strengthen that part that breaks, do it again, strengthen, etc. So when Elon had a rocket, the first rockets missed the barge, he tweeted, "We had a successful test." Well, how do you have a successful test when a $100 million rocket falls over and blows apart? Because he figured out why it happened and they fixed it and they did it again and again and again. He had repeated, quote, failures, unquote, in order to get it to reliably go onto the barge. And that's the way an entrepreneur thinks. So you will see, the relevance here is you will see a lot of things implemented. You'll see a very fast development cycle that is going to cause us all to say, how could they have, etc. And you'll see a very rapid rate of innovation, innovate, drop, like Google does. And that's absolutely what you're going to see. So be ready for a very fast cycle of this kind of try and drop experimentation. which you should love, Madalyn, because you're the poster gal for experimentation.
Right, but he's moving too fast, and with all the people that have quit and been let go, and so it's a smaller staff, and they've had a hiring freeze, it's a little concerning how much they can do at warp speed. Let's go ahead and move on. We got one more speaker left, Michael. Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Hello, friends. I came up to the stage when George started talking because I just wanted to reinforce and add on to what he was saying about audio. Because I think about the quote from Jeff Goldblum in Jurassic Park, where he talks about just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I've been producing content, video and audio content, since 1998. And I can tell you that audio, even though it's one half of the audiovisual experience, is probably the more important half. Because think about it, how many times have we had the TV on in the background while we're doing other things? We're still listening, but we're not always glancing at the screen. Or we listen to a podcast, we don't have to see what people are doing. I mean, there's so much information and communication you can convey through just audio when video is really not necessary. We're not seeing each other right now, and yet we're carrying on a wonderful conversation. So I guess I would just say, to wrap this up, since this is about social audio news and so on, that, don't feel like video is the end all be all and that you always have to show something on some screen, because there's still so much value to audio and so much can be conveyed and communicated and improved upon just from sound. So, I guess I'll just leave it right there.
Yes, Michael. Yes, and yes again. And it brings me back to this protocol article that I was talking about. And I've actually found this while I've been listening, but which proves the point, doesn't it? I was listening, but I could still be doing something else. Michael Mignano, who is the founder of, I've lost the thread, founder of Anchor, has actually commented in this article that I was talking about how one of audio's down points is the fact that it doesn't require all of your attention. The quote here says, "Many people listen to podcasts while running errands, working out or cooking." Now, for me, that has always been a benefit. The fact that you can listen to something and do something else at the same time.
Definitely.
And he's totally calling this out as a reason why this is an uphill battle, apparently, for audio, he says, that people don't give it their full attention. Whereas I feel like that's totally its USP. It's the fact that I can listen to something while I'm driving, while I'm making the kids lunch, while I'm scrolling the internet. That's the whole reason why I can consume so much content, because I can do it with my ears and it doesn't require my eyes. And his whole point here is, he says, the reality is you can consume content more quickly and efficiently through your eyes than you can through your ears. I don't know. I just don't agree with that at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other example I was thinking of while I was waiting is, parents can tell when one of their children is coming into the room and which child is coming into the room just by listening. Yep. Somehow hearing the footsteps or whatever behind you, oh, that's my daughter or that's my son or my child or whatever. You don't have to see everything. We can learn and take in so much about the world just from listening. I can listen to somebody on the other end of the house and what they're doing and almost have a visual in my brain of them moving the dishes around and where they're putting things and so on just by listening. So don't sleep on audio, and don't feel like because video's the big thing and everybody's TikToking and video YouTubing and all this stuff that you have to do video. Now, if it adds something to the experience, that's fine. If it expands your audience, that's fine. But be intentional about why you're doing video if you're going to do video and if it's really necessary. That's what I would say. Mm-hmm. Thanks a lot.
I agree with Michael, but I agree more than that. I think that there's a trap that we could easily fall into, that a lot of people fall into, and that is that audio is just the audio track of the audio video experience. No. If it's audio only, that is not just the audio track of the video. What happens is people translate their facial expressions and gestures into what I call audio gestures. So people will say, aha, instead of nodding their head, knowing that they're on video. See, on Zoom, they might nod their head, or they might wiggle their fingers, in that deaf applause gesture. But when they're audio only, they translate their voice into these audio gestures. Yeah, got it. Yep, right. That's why I like open mic. And so it's a different experience. If you listen to me on a video call versus an audio call, my voice is completely different because I throw everything into my voice on audio. Just learn to do that. And everybody does that to some extent.
Yeah, excellent points. I mean, this has been such a great conversation today. Thank you to all of our speakers who came on and shared so much great stuff. And we're available in all of your favorite podcast apps. We're out there, All Things Audio. You can also go to allthingsaudiopodcast.com as well.
You certainly can. And you can catch us here on Twitter and use the hashtag AllThingsAudio, and we'll pick that up throughout the week. So that's it for this week. But thank you so much to everyone that's been here in the space with us and those of you listening. And we'll catch up with you next week.
Bye, everybody.